This webinar is about renewable energy certificates. Early this year, I came across some interesting piece of information that Kenya had been approved by the International Tracking Standard Foundation, the iTrack Foundation, as an issuer of IREX. And I got interested to know what IREX are, because the principle of REX is new in the Kenyan market. So as I pursued my curiosity, I got to learn that there is a company called Monsoon Company that is the first company to establish a renewable energy certificates project here in Kenya. And since the idea of REX is a very new concept in the Kenyan space, in the global space, it's not that new, though it's relatively new. I got interested, and I thought, why not learn from the experts? So I reached out to Monsoon Carbon. Thank God for the interconnected world right now. So I dropped them an email, and they agreed to come and join us for this webinar to teach us about REC. So I'm also here to learn, just like the rest of you, and I hope we're going to have a great learning session. So Monsoon Carbon is a Singapore-based company. It's registered in Singapore. It was established in 2011, and they are a sustainability consultancy firm. They specialize in helping companies to meet their sustainability goals by offering them or selling to them environmental commodities. Environmental commodities include one of the commodities that we are most familiar with, for most of us who are familiar with the sustainability, climate change conversation. Carbon credits are the most maybe commonly known environmental commodities. But Monsoon Carbons, besides voluntary carbon credits, they also offer international renewable energy certificates. And they have a global presence in over 15 countries, and Kenya is one of them. I'm going to introduce our speaker today from Monsoon Carbon. His name is Tim Pickett. So Tim Pickett works with Monsoon Carbon as the sales. He's a sales manager for Monsoon Carbon, and he has worked with over 125 plus REC projects, with working across 16 countries. And so REC has been in this space, in this industry for quite some time. He is experienced. He understands what IREX are. He understands how the market works. And today he's going to give us more insight on IREX. So ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, allow me to introduce our expert speaker today, Tim Pickett from Monsoon Carbon. Thank you so much. So as just before Tim comes in, let me just say, in case you have a question as we proceed with the webinar, you can drop it on the chat. I'm going to look at it at the end, and we are going to answer your questions as well. Towards the end, if you'd like to ask your question verbally, we can allow you to just unmute your microphone and ask your question, but feel free to drop your questions on the chat box. So Tim Pickett, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. First of all, I'd like to extend a thank you, obviously, to Elizabeth and the team at Njogu and Associates Advocates, and also in conjunction with Impact Africa Consulting for giving me the opportunity to present today. I'm Australian, but I've been living in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam now for the last 5 years. And as Elizabeth mentioned, I've been working with Monsoon for just under 5 years as well. Now, Monsoon is a company that was registered in Singapore originally in 2011. The majority of the team now works out of Vietnam, and Vietnam is one of our stronger markets as well, and the rest of Southeast Asia. But we also have quite a large presence in Africa in regards to international renewable energy certificates. And we're very excited and very proud to be the originator and aggregator of the first IREC project in Kenya, which I'll touch on throughout the presentation. But yes, I'd like to thank you all for your time, for participating in the webinar, and hope you enjoy the presentation. Just going to share my screen and get started. Okay, so I'll get straight into the presentation. I'll say a little bit more about the company just at the very end. I'll just breeze over a few things at the very end, but we'll get straight into the presentation. It's obviously on RECs, which are Renewable Energy Certificates. And just flick over to the first page here. Okay, so what is a REC? It's I guess it's quite a new concept, especially in Kenya. Kenya was authorized as an IREC issuing country in January 2024. It's a country and a region that we have a great deal of interest in. We were very happy to finally hear the news that Kenya is authorized for IRECs. I think it's a fantastic step forward. And to explain what a REC is, so a REC is a form of documentation that verifies the production of a certain amount of renewable energy, the type of fuel source, the period of time in which the electricity was generated, and even the exact power plant from which that electricity was generated. But a REC in all cases is the environmental attribute of electricity that has been generated from a renewable energy power plant, or that has been generated with zero greenhouse gas emissions. So it could have been generated from a solar farm, a wind farm, a geothermal plant, or a hydropower plant, for example. Now, how much electricity or how much green electricity does one REC represent? So one REC represents 1 megawatt hour of electricity that has been generated by a renewable energy source, or purchasing one REC gives you the rights. You're purchasing the rights to 1 megawatt hour of electricity that has been generated with zero greenhouse gas emissions. Now, okay, so in regards to the REC associated with each megawatt hour of green electricity can be sold separately from the electricity itself. So provided that the project developers have retained the ownership of the environmental attributes, and that it hasn't been sold off with the electricity to the national off-taker, for example. The REC associated with each megawatt hour can be sold separately from the electricity itself. The electricity can be sold to the national grid, or off-grid, for example, to factories or industrial park tenants directly. But the REC itself can then be sold separately to energy consumers that are trying to virtually switch across to green electricity when there is no other alternative. So, for example, rooftop solar is growing. The industry is growing. You can consume electricity through rooftop solar, but there's always generally a gap if you're adhering to a voluntary reporting protocol, and your company has pledged to go green by a particular percentage. There's generally a gap that needs to be filled, and that's where RECs come in. And being able to sell the RECs separately from the electricity itself gives energy consumers the choice or the option of switching to green electricity virtually, and that additional revenue stream for the projects incentivizes those project developers to continue building more renewable energy assets. When adhering to a reporting protocol or to corporate sustainability targets, 1 megawatt hour of electricity combined with a REC then becomes 1 megawatt hour of green electricity. And so the standards, the REC standards, there are two most broadly known on an international level. Some countries have their own national REC schemes, but internationally, international REC standards, there's two that are the most well known. And the IREX, or the International Tracking Standard, which was formerly the IREX standard, issues IREX. That's their product. And IREX stands for International Renewable Energy Certificate. They are by far and away the most broadly known and issue the highest volumes of renewable energy certificates globally. The other one that's known on an international level that deals within emerging markets such as Kenya and such as Africa as a continent is the Tiger standard, which Tiger stands for Tradable Instruments for Global Renewables. It's the same product, one Tiger or one IREC, both equal 1 megawatt hour of electricity generated with zero greenhouse gas emissions. So these standards are around, they operate as certification systems that track and verify the production and consumption of renewable energy. So when a renewable energy power plant generates electricity, it's eligible to also apply for environmental attribute certificates, which in this case are RECs. And based on the amount of renewable energy produced, which is verified with through third-party verification, such as electricity sales receipts to the government off-taker. These certificates are then made available for purchase by energy consumers who can then use them to substantiate their renewable energy usage claims. These tracking standards ensure that firstly, that the power plants are real, and as Monsoon Carbon's job as an originator and aggregator of IREC projects, we collect the correct documentation to verify this, and we submit it to one of the standards, one of the aforementioned standards. So we would, to verify that the power plant is real, we would submit a power purchase agreement, single line electrical diagram, some project photos, the boundaries of the project, for example. And then once the power plant is verified and registered, we then have to verify that the electricity generation on a monthly basis, which is done through the submission of, as I mentioned, through the submission of third-party metering evidence. Generally, monthly electricity sales invoices from a national government off-taker. Also, for off-grid power plants, we can log into inverter portals or SCADA portals and verify the monthly production that way as well. The RECs are then verified, they're reputable and unique, and there can be no double counting. And these standards don't have a role in buying or selling the RECs. That would be a conflict of interest. They just enable the process. They provide a platform or a database, registry, I guess you could say, where we're able to issue the RECs into an account, into Monsoon's account, for example. We then trade them to other retailers, or we can retire them, which is the end result. We retire them or we redeem them on behalf of the end user, which would be the corporate buyer, the energy consumer. And that's the proof that they have taken the extra step in regards to meeting their corporate sustainability targets. So how do RECs work? So as we know, fossil fuel energy and renewable energy both generally goes into the same national grid, into one pool. It cannot be separated, in which case when your company or your household, your factory is purchasing electricity from the national grid, you're purchasing a mixture of green and brown electricity. There's no way, in the majority of countries, you're unable to directly source renewable electricity. It's very difficult. Apart from obviously rooftop solar, it can be very difficult to source that green electricity, in which case it makes it very difficult to meet your sustainability targets or voluntary carbon reporting targets. So the renewable energy and the fossil fuel energy is all sent to the national grid. The environmental attributes of that renewable electricity are then managed by a company such as Monsoon Carbon. We create the RECs, we issue them into our account, we find the buyers, and then we finalize and complete a REC redemption statement for a particular amount of megawatt hours for the company in question. So who is buying RECs? Renewable energy certificates are an established, accepted, and cost-effective way to reduce carbon emissions and promote sustainable energy practices. They're purchased by those looking to reduce their carbon emissions in a verifiable way. In countries or situations where purchasing electricity from renewable sources directly is not possible or practical, the purchase of renewable energy certificates, or RECs, offers a practical and flexible way to help buyers to meet their voluntary corporate commitments to reduce their environmental impact, to achieve marketing and CSR objectives, to meet requirements and KPIs of their clients, and more, I guess, most specifically, to meet targets and pledges committed to under voluntary reporting initiatives such as CDP, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, the RE100, which is very well known, and the Science Based Targets Initiative. So global brands are under pressure to be going in the right direction when it comes to their sustainability, and we are seeing more and more global brands signing up to these voluntary reporting initiatives, and putting in ambitious pledges to reduce their footprint, and the challenge then is to meet those or to achieve those objectives. And finally, by purchasing RECs, individuals and companies can support the development and production of renewable energy sources, which helps to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and assists in combating climate change. I have been, just before I move to the next slide, it's obviously a new market for us, with Kenya just recently being added as an IREC authorized country. But I do see that Kenya is leading the way in Africa in regards to renewables. And I think it's fantastic, and we're really excited to be a part of the Kenya market. So skipping to the rules, and I guess not the prices so much, but the rules of the REC rules. So companies that are reporting to the RE100 or to the Science Based Targets initiatives have to follow a set of rules, or technical guidelines. So for example, it's country specific. Okay, so not like carbon credits, which are internationally transferable. Generally, you can buy carbon offsets from one country to offset your emissions in another country. That's not the case with renewable energy certificates. You need to purchase renewable energy certificates from power plants that operate in the same country as where the electricity is consumed. RECs also expire, so you can't purchase old RECs for current electricity consumption. The period, the vintage of the REC, or the period in which that electricity was generated, has to be reasonably close to the period in which the end user or the company actually consumes that electricity. If there's the general rule around the time frame, or the period of time, has to be within 18 months. So for example, if you're purchasing RECs to reduce your 2024 electricity consumption, or to switch to green electricity consumption for 2024, then you need to purchase RECs from power plants that generate electricity within the 2024 calendar year, 6 months before or 6 months after only. Cannot purchase old RECs for current electricity consumption. Now, there can be no double counting. So you need to include all of the environmental attributes of the electricity. So a carbon credit cannot be claimed for the same megawatt hour as a REC. Only 1 megawatt hour of electricity can only be claimed once. And the RE100 has recently introduced a 15-year commissioning date limit. There is a 15% buffer there, which we don't generally work with. We try and stay as particular as possible, but the RE100 has come out and is supporting new and young renewable electricity developments. So they are not accepting renewable energy certificates for 2024 reporting from a power plant that is older than 15 years from the date of commissioning. These technical guidelines do get updated every couple of years, or every several years. The discussions are had, and then sometimes the technical guidelines are updated, which Monsoon Carbon are always on top of. We're not experts in every single reporting protocol, but we do have a fairly strong understanding of CDP, RE100, and science-based targets, for example. So just in regards to the pricing of RECs and what influences a REC price, sorry, I've just got to move my little bar there. So there are a few indicators or a few things that will influence the cost of a REC. The main one is the supply and demand, and how much renewable energy is available in one country and how much supply there is in regards to IREC registered projects. You'll see, you may or may not know, but for example, in Taiwan or Singapore, there's very, very little renewable energy. And as a result, one REC in Singapore costs $70 US. In Kenya and Cambodia, it's closer to $3. In oversupplied countries such as Vietnam and China, RECs can be as cheap as 30 or 40 cents. It also, another influencer for price is the technology or the fuel source of the REC. Solar and wind are well known and quite simple, and they're generally, for global brands, there is a preference to purchase renewable energy certificates that are generated by solar and wind farms. There is a little bit of a question around sort of hydropower, especially large hydropower, due to the reputational risks that companies may enter into by purchasing RECs from a hydropower plant that had a negative impact on the environment. There can be a number of factors there, but upsetting the flow of marine life, flooding valleys, possibly having to move on small villages or minorities in order to build a particular hydropower asset. So some global brands will just refuse to purchase hydropower RECs, again, in which case they would prefer solar and wind, which is a lot more simple to understand, and generally has a lot less of a negative impact on the surrounding environment. As I mentioned before, the vintage of the REC. So current vintage will be more expensive than previous vintage. RECs expire, as I mentioned before. You cannot use RECs from 2020 or 2021 for your 2024 reporting. So RECs do lose their value. So for example, now that we're in 2024, you can still purchase RECs from 2023 for your 2024 reporting, and they will generally come at a discount as companies are trying to clear any remaining REC volumes that they have still left in their account. And last but not least, the order size. A large order of RECs would generally come with a cheaper unit price as compared to purchasing a small quantity of RECs. Now, how to purchase and redeem RECs. So I'll just breeze through this. A company gathers their consumption information or data for 1 year, determine the percentage or the REC volume that you will need based on your electricity consumption data and the sustainability targets set by your company. You decide if you have a preference for a particular technology, fuel source, such as solar, wind, small hydropower, large hydropower. You would then contact Monsoon to begin the process. We would basically send a request form where you put your company details in, the name of the company, the location or the site location, the address, the purpose of redemption, and when you would like those RECs delivered or retired on your behalf. We provide a quote. We draft an agreement. You enter into a legally binding agreement. We onboard your company, and then we redeem and deliver the RECs in accordance with your delivery schedule or preference. Now, it's a digital certificate. The certificate itself is emailed, and it's very simple. And I'll just move forward to show you an example of a REC redemption statement. So this is what you would receive: your company name, the quantity of RECs or megawatt hours that you are having retired, the address of your company, the reporting or consumption period that's relevant, and the purpose of your redemption. So that could be something as simple as RE100 or Science-Based Targets Initiative. It could be to meet corporate sustainability goals. This is manual entry where you can enter anything there that you would like displayed on your REC redemption statement. On page 2, it has the information about the RECs that you've purchased. So the power plant, the country of origin, the energy source and technology, the commissioning date of the plant. Generally was going to say 0 greenhouse gas emissions because it's renewable. And then you'll have a unique ID number or serial number for each of your RECs, and a QR code and a verification key to verify that those RECs are legitimate. And just a little bit of information about the Kenya REC market. So the government of Kenya has prioritized the scaling up of renewables in the country, which is fantastic, and that's something that we're really proud to be a part of, intending to achieve 100% renewable energy generation by 2030. That's a very ambitious target. And Kenya has in recent years emerged as a trailblazer in Africa for renewable energy generation, and as a result is poised to have a growing market and demand for the purchasing of environmental attributes. As a result of this, and being such a huge East African hub, Kenya has now adopted the ITRAC Foundation's International Renewable Energy Certificate, or the IREC-E, as its energy attribute certificate. This has been implemented without restriction since January 2024, as I'd mentioned earlier. So this means that companies in Kenya can now purchase IRECs to certify their electricity consumption, reducing their Scope 2 emissions and meeting corporate sustainability goals for Kenyan companies, and reducing their Scope 3 emissions for multinational companies with supply chains in Kenya. We believe this will be welcome news for the thriving industries in Kenya, such as, not limited to, but such as food and beverage, automotive, construction, pharmaceuticals, and textiles, all of which consume high amounts of electricity within their day-to-day operations. A number of multinational companies with operations in Kenya have already signed up to one of the main voluntary carbon reporting protocols. I did mention them before, but a few examples of these reporting protocols are the RE100, which stands for Renewable Energy 100%, the Science-Based Targets Initiative, and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Purchasing IRECs is an effective way to integrate renewable energy into your global sustainability strategy, and they are accepted by the above voluntary reporting protocols. Now, the first IREC project in Kenya, it's the Malindi Solar Farm, owned by Globalec, who we work closely with in other countries in Africa as well. South Africa, we manage a number of Globalec's wind and solar farms. We do work closely with them, and we are planning or currently negotiating to extend our collaboration. The Malindi Solar Farm is a 40 megawatt solar development that's connected to the Kenyan national grid. Over 150,000 solar panels were installed on the site, and these will initially yield almost 100 gigawatt hours or 100,000 megawatt hours of renewable electricity each year, 1.6 million megawatt hours over the life of the project. It's located in Langabaya, Malindi in Kenya, and it was the commercial operation date was January the 25th, 2022. It's a very new renewable energy asset or development. Now, the benefits of the Malindi Solar Farm. So the project has made substantial and multifaceted contributions to the province, enhancing social well-being, promoting environmental sustainability, and boosting economic growth in Malindi, Kenya. The project helps to meet Kenya's growing energy demand and provides electricity to underserved areas. It supports the goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030, and reducing emissions by about just under 45,000 tonnes of CO2. Malindi Solar Farm, The Malindi Solar Farm has an extensive partnership with the local community, including local employment and scholarships for local students. The project also constructed a new 220 kilovolt substation that has already been handed over to Kenya Power, the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, for use as national grid infrastructure. So just a little bit more, and I've just got to move this little bar around, I apologize. Just a little bit more about Monsoon Carbon. I don't want to spend too much time talking about us. I'd much prefer to be talking about the Kenyan energy market. But as we already mentioned, we're close to 15 years old, and we're originally founded in Singapore. We are experts in environmental commodities. The company started out environmental consulting, doing feasibility studies on renewable energy projects. and we moved into the renewable energy certificate market, or the REC market, in 2018. We now exclusively manage the environmental attributes for over 125 renewable energy projects in 16 countries. We are looking to grow specifically within the African market. It's been a great market for us, and we love to be the first in the market. We love to be pioneers, such as the situation currently in Kenya, where we were able to register the first IREC project. We have sold over 6 million renewable energy certificates in 2023. Our aim is around 8 million this year. And that's not the China or the India, the Turkey or the Brazil markets. We pride ourselves on being in the underserved countries and regions, such as Kenya, Uganda. We're looking at Namibia right now. We were the first IREC project in Cambodia, the first in Bangladesh. We do pride ourselves on being the first into those underserved areas, and facilitating the ability for companies in those countries to reach their corporate sustainability targets. This is just an overview of where we manage IREC projects. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, we are quite strong in Southeast Asia. We're based here, but we also have quite a large presence, and a growing presence in Africa. We recently spent some time in Latin America as well, and we're starting to originate projects throughout the South American and Central American countries. So our services for buyers, which we did touch on before, we identify and assess the options available for each company to reduce or offset their emissions. We understand the rules and guidelines of the various carbon accounting and reporting initiatives. We source carbon credits and/or RECs from our own global portfolio. We don't have to work, in some countries we do, but we generally don't have to work with intermediaries. We have agreements directly with the power plants, and we have full range to manage and trade the RECs as we see fit, provided it's in line with our legally binding agreements. We ensure that carbon credits and RECs are of high quality, permanent, and underpinned by credible claims. We can transfer or directly retire and redeem IRECs or carbon credits on behalf of the energy consumer, and we can manage their Scope 3 emissions from their global network of suppliers. It just probably finished a little bit sooner than what I'd expected. I apologize if I've been speaking a little fast. I'm a little bit nervous about presenting, but I would like to thank you all for your time this afternoon. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the presentation, regarding RECs, regarding Monsoon, and regarding the Kenya energy market.
All right. Thank you so much, team, for that presentation. Personally, I've learned quite much. Looking at the charts to see whether there's a question. Okay, I'm just going to read a question here. Can RECs be generated from power plants?
So RECs, yes, they can only be generated from renewable energy power plants. In saying that, they can be generated from rooftop assets as well. We do manage a portfolio of rooftop solar assets in a number of countries: Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Malaysia. We manage small rooftop systems, but they can only be generated. They are renewable energy certificates, and they are the claim that you are purchasing renewable green electricity. So yes, RECs can only be generated from renewable energy sources. Yes, I see what you mean. Yes, so absolutely. So I'm just reading the continuation of that. So they can be generated. So if a factory has a rooftop solar asset, or there is a solar farm that has been built next to a factory, for example, that is supplying renewable energy directly to a factory, or to tenants from an industrial park, RECs can be generated from those power plants or those rooftop systems. However, the tenant, so the factory that has that rooftop solar plant, can then not claim that they are consuming renewable electricity, because they are, by registering the project for RECs, they are forfeiting that claim that they are purchasing or consuming renewable electricity, because they're able to sell their RECs separately. So you would then just be consuming electricity. If you are registered the project to sell RECs, that additional revenue stream that you're then receiving or able to receive, you can then not claim that the electricity that you're consuming is green, because the REC, that's the REC. The REC is then providing that proof. So we do see factories with their own rooftop solar devices that want to be able to verify the use of the green electricity for reporting or auditing reasons, in which case they consume the electricity, but they do register the project under the international tracking standard. They then redeem the RECs on behalf of their own company, and they have that third-party verification that they are using green electricity, which helps towards their carbon reporting goals.
Okay, thank you. Hope that was early, your question was answered. I'm seeing also, he's saying that, and is there any way they can be sold internationally? There must be a provision. Maybe you can shed light on, because as you said, for RECs, they apply within the locality within which the electricity is produced. It has to be the same locality of the consumer. So if you can shed light on what's the rationale of the fact that you cannot buy RECs if you're not within the locality within which the electricity is generated. What's that rationale?
Yeah, so you are able, it's so in case I probably wasn't clear about it before, if you're adhering to these voluntary reporting initiatives, their rules state that you must purchase RECs from power plants that are generating electricity in the same country that you are consuming the electricity. That is, if you are reporting to those protocols, that is a technical guideline that you must adhere to. There's nothing to say that you can't purchase RECs from another country. You may have in-house, like an in-house sustainability strategy. You may not be specifically complying with one of these reporting initiatives, in which case you can purchase. I mean, for example, before Kenya was, you can purchase RECs from other countries. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. It would just be dependent on the reporting protocol that you're trying to comply with. So we have seen, for example, before Kenya was an authorized IREC issuing country, Kenyan companies were more than likely purchasing IRECs from Ugandan power plants or neighboring countries. They were basically doing whatever they could do because purchasing RECs in Kenya wasn't an option at that time. We also do see, for example, Singapore, which I breezed over before. There's so many data centers chewing phenomenal amounts of electricity, but there's just no renewable electricity available. So the next best thing would be to purchase RECs from power plants in a neighboring country, in which case Monsoon Carbon has sold a lot of Vietnam RECs to Singaporean companies that are not adhering to the RE100 or the Science Based Targets Initiative, but they are adhering to an in-house sustainability strategy in which the purchase of RECs from a neighboring country is accepted. So they can be sold internationally. If you are adhering to a particular reporting initiative, the RECs would generally have to be purchased from a power plant in the same country you're consuming the electricity in order to comply with those reporting protocols. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think Ali, you can just confirm that your question has been answered. So basically what Tim is saying is that it depends on the reporting protocol that you are reporting under. Then the other question is, the recs are exclusive to, the recs are exclusive to electricity generation only? That's supposed to be a question. What if there's a renewable energy plant that is benefiting from CDM but emits some carbon? Can separate carbon credits be claimed separately on the carbon capture for the CO2 emissions, or would that be double accounting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Elizabeth, I didn't mean to butt in.
Yeah, I think you got a question. You can answer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So RECs are exclusive to electricity generation. They are the claim that you are switching from, switching across to green electricity. However, we have a portfolio. It's a great question, actually. Monsoon manages a portfolio of biogas plants in Malaysia, and it's not that, so the electricity generation is used for RECs, but the methane capture is actually used for carbon credits. It's not double counting because the electricity, the megawatt hour of electricity is not being counted twice. So, for example, this particular biogas plant in Malaysia is set up under the IREX standard, or the International Tracking Standard, and we do issue RECs for the electricity generation, but it's also signed up to a group Vera carbon credit project, in which case the methane capture is the catalyst for the carbon credits. So that is not double counting, but you cannot create a carbon credit and a REC from the same megawatt hour of electricity. But yes, you can absolutely, in those sorts of cases, have a methane capture carbon credit program and a renewable energy certificate program from the same plant if it's applicable.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm not seeing any other question, but you can keep the questions coming on the chat. But if you'd like to ask your question as well, you can just let me know.
Sure.
Tim, I also have some questions. Well,
sure.
So it appears that it's clear that RECs are exclusive to electricity generation, just as you say. And my concern would be, especially for the Kenyan market, Kenya is the predominant energy source for electricity in Kenya is actually renewable energy, because the largest source of energy generation in Kenya is actually, according to the iTrack assessment that they did, they say that 92% of energy generation is from renewable energy, largely being hydro and geothermal. So what does that spell for the Kenyan market, considering that for most companies that would want to buy RECs, it would be to meet their sustainability targets, and especially for sustainability reporting. So if most of the consumers within the Kenyan space actually consume electricity that is from a renewable source from the international grid, so then what does that spell for the demand? Because let me just contrast. Let me just give a context. Sure. Contrasting that with a country like South Africa, where the largest percentage of electricity is generated from coal. So you see, for a country like South Africa, most of their energy is from fossil fuel. So the demand would be high, because then now for a company that wants to meet sustainability target, renewable energy would be ideal. But contrasting that with Kenya, where already the default setting is that a lot of the energy is already coming from renewable sources. What does that say concerning the demand in the Kenyan market?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And it will be interesting to see which way that goes. I mean, with a 100% renewable energy goal by 2030, I think RECs in that case would then serve the purpose of verifying that you are using renewable energy for the reasons of complying with those voluntary reporting initiatives. you're absolutely right. I also saw that Kenya, that hydropower and geothermal were the major fuel sources. When the grid is 100% green, will RECs serve a purpose? I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure what, when it comes to sort of the RE100 and those particular guidelines, whether that would be that would be factored in, or if they still want to see third-party verified proof of that green electricity. So it's a very good question. I actually spoke to Angus, my director, about that today. When I showed him the statistics, he said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. So where will the demand come from if the grid is 100% renewable?" And I guess it stands to be seen. It's fantastic that Kenya is almost 100% reliant on renewables only. It's absolutely fantastic. Will there be a market for it in the next 5 to 7 years for IREX? There may not. At the moment, there is. We've had quite a good uptake since we registered the Malindi Solar Farm. There may also be the case where companies would like to specifically procure RECs from a specific fuel source such as solar. I'm not 100% aware of the age of the geothermal and hydropower plants. I apologize, I haven't done that research. I do know from doing a bit of research with geothermal in Indonesia that some of the older plants need a diesel generator to fire it up, for example. I'm not sure what sort of impact that will have on the REC market and whether they'll still be sought after. But it does remain to be seen. So we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on it. At the same time, this is an alternative at the moment, and an option or a way of switching across. When that option is no longer needed, then that's a fantastic result for Kenya.
Yeah, great. So basically what we're saying is that Kenya is not a very right market when it comes to RECs, considering the grid is almost 100% green.
Almost 100%, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe that's where I think it's someone suggested that maybe we should consider the provision for the RECs being traded internationally. But also I think since you also trade in, you deal with carbon credits, for voluntary carbon credits, then the project would still serve the purpose for carbon credits, because carbon credits are tradable internationally. That
Yes,
was just, yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's I think with the major carbon credit standards such as Verra and Gold Standard, they no longer there's a few points that it depends on, but they're no longer accepting renewable energy power plants to register for carbon credits, unless it's a low income. I think it's a low income country. That I'm not all the way across the carbon side of things. But one thing you did mention before that was a question that we did speak of just a few minutes ago. There are countries neighboring Kenya that are not IREC authorized issuing countries, and they may not be anytime soon. So in that case, although it won't be compliant with RE100 or science-based targets, Kenyan RECs in that case could be sold to neighboring countries that do not yet have access to IRECs, which was the case when Kenyan companies were purchasing IRECs from Ugandan power plants. So there is scope for that as well. And if that complies with an in-house sustainability strategy, then that could definitely be a way to continue monetizing the environmental attributes of Kenyan power plants.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other question, but I also have another question. So in your dealings with RECs, my question is, where does RECs meet regulation?
Sorry, Elizabeth, I just missed that.
Where does RECs meet regulation? Like when you're dealing within the Kenyan space, in Kenya, it's IPRA is the authority that is authorized to license dealers with such projects like renewable energy projects. So in your case, when it comes to RECs, what is the how does the regulatory space look like for you?
Which specifically for Kenya?
Yeah, you can give an example of Kenya and maybe contrast it with other jurisdictions.
Yeah, so basically from my experience and understanding, a country, any specific country that is approached by the International Tracking Standard offers they don't like a letter of non-opposition that they are freely allowing RECs to be issued and traded within the country. We do see that some countries such as Malaysia, China, Indonesia are about to begin. Thailand are doing the same thing. They are introducing a national scheme that would then be, I guess, what would be the word, prioritized over IREX and international RECs. They are introducing national regulations that need to be adhered to. So, for example, China, which we only just found out this news today, they're a huge supplier of IREX, and there's obviously it's a huge country, and there is a massive amount of operations within the country. They are actually ceasing. That's the biggest IREX market in the world. And they are ceasing to continue issuing IREX as of 31 March 2025, and they are moving solely to GECs, which is a national initiative from the China government. So we are seeing that this is happening in some countries where they are not forcing. Well, I guess they are prioritizing a national renewable energy strategy or renewable energy scheme over internationally recognized certificates such as IREX.
In the Kenyan space, apart from just licensing, I don't think there's an elaborate regulatory framework for IREX, like
No.
there is for, I know there is for the carbon markets. There's a solid regulatory framework for carbon markets, but they have not yet developed one for IREX. Maybe considering that they just introduced that in Kenya recently. Okay. I know you tackled this, but I'd like you to answer this just to make it a bit more clear to someone here who may not be very familiar with the carbon offsetting. So just explain the difference between carbon offsetting and IREX.
Yes. So with carbon credits, you are offsetting emissions. You're purchasing carbon credits to offset emissions caused by a number of things. Renewable energy certificates are specifically to switch your energy consumption from brown to green. You're not offsetting your any emissions by purchasing IREX. You are simply switching across to green electricity. So you're not reducing you're not offsetting emissions, you're just switching across to green electricity, virtually being seen to be switching across to green electricity.
I listen that you don't have any other questions. So thank you so much, team. This was a very, 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 very informative session for me. I have learned a lot.